ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Rebels Flux. My name's Chris Netto. I am your host. We're back again. This time, we're going to bring you somebody unique, somebody different, maybe somebody you haven't heard from on a podcast lately, but you will know who they are from this point forward. Let's welcome to the show for the first time, Bryan Hellard. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, always a pleasure to have new faces, new folks, new voices. You've been around on the Twitterverse for a while, and we've connected there and been chatting back and forth. We met up a couple times at InfoComm now, so now it's to get you on video, put you in the hot seat, and see what you're all about, and to pick your brain.
Perfect. Let's hit it.
Let's go. All right, so first off, let's start off by saying who you are, where you're from, and what company are you with specifically?
Okay. Well, currently I'm with Wainhouse Research. I've been there for about 10 months now, and I head the evaluation lab here, which means that I get to test all the great video conferencing and communication gear.
That's awesome. So again, here I am. I'm stuck on a microphone interviewing people that get to play with cool toys all day. I need to reevaluate my career choices, because playing with toys would be kind of cool. Specifically, the unified communication toys are what you get to play with, correct?
Right. It's anything from USB cameras, video sound bars. I've been getting into touchscreen displays lately. Basically, anything you can think of that would go into a typical huddle space or meeting room, I get to test.
Awesome. So let's start with the obvious question. What are you seeing the most come your way? Are there more just USB cameras popping up? Is the interactive whiteboards, heading more your way because there's a whole now push for interactive whiteboards, or is that slowed down? What are some 10,000 foot view of what you're seeing that's proliferating the market right now?
Sure. It's interesting that the interactive whiteboards are kind of making a comeback in a big way. There are a lot of companies coming out with really good products, and with Microsoft behind it, Cisco behind it, it's just really roaring back. And I had never messed with whiteboards too much in the past, but I'm getting heavy into them now, and they're actually way more useful than I thought. It's been pretty cool. Seeing a lot of USB cameras, kind of with the codecs not going away, but fading slowly. USB cameras are becoming a really important part of the conference room now.
Yeah. I want to actually first start off with the whiteboard conversation that you just brought up. It's interesting you say that, because I'm questioning, and I know where you went with the, a couple years ago at InfoComm, everybody had a whiteboard. Everybody wanted to have a whiteboard. Whiteboards were the thing. And then nobody knew what to do with the whiteboard.
Right.
I don't think that the whiteboard at the time was being looped into the conversation of the ecosystem. You mentioned Cisco, you mentioned Microsoft. I'll add Zoom to the picture as well.
Yep.
You have now these purpose-built whiteboards that are out there now, all competing against each other with the sole purpose of unified communication. I think part of the lack of identity that whiteboard had was that it was the everything to everyone mentality. Nobody knew exactly what they wanted or how they wanted to use it, but they knew that they wanted it. So everybody just threw everything in there. I mean, you got everything in the kitchen sink in the early whiteboards.
Right. And it was more proprietary stuff as far as technology. Now there's a lot of software companies building software specifically for touch screens, and it's kind of a whole new world now.
Do you think that the ecosystems are now the ones that are fueling, I guess, the drive to add new features? I mean, is it now you choose one? You're in Google, you're in Microsoft, you're in Cisco, you're in Zoom. You pick one of those, and then in that pool, you got a plethora of choices. And I'm using a big word.
Yeah, I don't know which comes first. Is it you choose a touch screen and work on the ecosystem from there, or you start with the ecosystem, and if they have a touch screen, you can figure out a use case and get one of those. I don't know which comes first.
Yeah, that's the chicken or the egg right now that we're in. Is it the ecosystem or is it the peripherals? Depending on, I guess, who you ask. You're obviously on the beta testing and the hands-on technical testing of the equipment, but I'm sure that there's people within Wainhouse that pretty much will sit there and ask that same question and try to get that solved as far as what ecosystem are you looking at for the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yep. So perfect. All right. So you mentioned the whiteboards. We went into how the ecosystems are kind of driving the whiteboard challenge right now. What are you seeing special, or what are you seeing that's unique now to a webcam? Because for many years, as a hardcore AV guy such as myself, webcams were sitting on top of PCs. They had a very short field of view. Microphones were okay. What are you seeing coming out of these tests, trends within the USB microphones that's promising?
Sure. Basically, they almost all have some sort of framing capability. It's kind of table stakes now that you have to have an intelligent camera. You can't just have a camera that you just plug in and it is what it is and captures the whole room. A lot of them are coming out with really good audio, really surprising audio in such small devices. Poly Studios is a good one. It's got very good audio that surprised me. Trying to think of what else that's
is the AI function, appearing in these cameras. Is that's what's driving the smart like framing and all that? There's got to be more AI behind just what a standard camera would be.
Sure. There's a little bit of AI, and most of it is they're tracking faces, or in some cases tracking torsos to zoom in on the correct people. It's not so much of an artificial intelligence. It's more just object tracking that frames the people.
Okay, so you're the expert. I'm going to pick your brain. What seems to be the better way to track? There is two schools of thought to that. There is the framing that follows bodies and faces, or there's the ones where you actually have the pendant. What have you seen out there that seems to be at least the most accurate? Because the one thing we don't like is the super, where did he go? Oh, there they are.
Right, right. I'm personally not a fan of the pendant. That's more for a classroom situation. If it's one person that's walking around the room. For the cameras that I test, they're more conference room oriented. So it's going to be tracking via faces, or some of them use a little bit of voice with a little bit of tracking the face to pick you up.
Have you come across any cameras yet that have almost like a chairman function, where it would stay on the one person in the room, say the head of the table, even though it's a USB camera? There's no control systems there. You pretty much set that's like a chairman function. Is that such a thing yet, or is that still relegated to pretty much audio or audio systems?
Yeah, I haven't seen that too much in these USB cameras. It's just you either turn the function of auto framing on or turn it off, and if you have it off, you can just zoom into wherever you want, but it's not sort of a chairman function.
Cool, man. I got a bunch of questions because USB is kind of weird. Nobody thinks of the USB camera until you put it in the room and it's not the right camera.
Right.
Because that could quickly become not the right camera at least within two meetings. You're like, you know what? That field of view wasn't good enough. It's not wide enough as a wide angle lens. What do you see seems to be the right, for the people that are watching this, what's a good field of view? I guess, how wide of an angle should they look for when doing and you're talking about conference rooms that are roughly in that, 2 to possibly 6 to 8 range.
Right.
That's where you would cap it off, right?
Yeah. So the larger field of view cameras, the problem that you have is they're going to have some warping on the edges. You just have to deal with that with a wide field of view lens. And so I like cameras that are in about the 100-degree range, but it all depends on the room. If you have a skinny table, you won't need, a super wide field of view. But if you're up against the displays, you're going to need the wider field of view.
Yeah. All right. So there's still not a magical number made. I guess people are out there pushing 120s and all different types
Right.
of, excuse me, angles.
Right, and that's
Go ahead.
what we do in our evaluations, and which is why I do what I do. I detail out the field of view. What is the field of view? What are the capabilities of these cameras? Where should you mount it? Where can you mount it? What provides the best situation as far as light control? You know, can you use it in a brightly lit room? Can you use it in a dim room? And so our evaluations are all based on this is hardcore testing with all these cameras.
I've seen your setups, and if you haven't, and these are for the people that are watching this video, if you haven't seen Bryan's setups that he posts, he will regularly post a picture of something he's working on in his office, and it's like white lights off to the side, and he's got this whole contraption thing. You know, he's completely got some duct tape, not duct tape, or some gaffer's tape wrapped around things. He's simulating the environment as best as possible for these tests.
Right.
How often do you have to tear apart your own space to do these type of setups?
Weekly. Yeah, it all depends. Right now I'm testing, I think, 3 or 4 different products. So depending on what I'm doing for that day, I may have to roll something out to the middle of my office or tear everything down, set up like a huddle room scenario. And so it's a constantly changing lab.
So in other words, you need a lot of room for activities.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So we'll just put that in the notes down there, what I'm referring to when I say we need rooms for activities. So the next obvious question is if the wide angle lens is not an option, where are we at today with PTZ USB cameras? That used to be kind of like didn't exist. And then all of a sudden they started popping up. Where are PTZ USB cameras today?
Most of them are going digital. It's ePTZ where the sensor is, you know, a 4K or greater, and so it can zoom in and still, you know, be HD quality and still have really good quality. But kind of the old-fashioned large PTZ cameras that move around and annoy the heck out of people, those are kind of they're not going away, but it's kind of like the Codex. They're sort of fading off into the distance.
Oh,
at least from what I see.
And do you see, so for you, what would you say is right now the split between like a fixed view lens versus a PTZ? Is it a 50-50 split as far as what you're seeing being deployed out into the fields? Or the fixed view stuff, the traditional USB cameras over the, you know, are those like the Panacasts? Are they that type of fixed lens seems to be the ones that are being deployed more than say a robotic or PTZ?
Well, when you're talking fixed, the Panacast does have, you know, zoom and framing ability.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it goes back to where buying a fixed field of view camera that stays at that fixed field of view, those cameras I don't think will get a lot of traction, because there are going to be times where you want to auto frame or just frame where you want.
Okay. You are definitely focused obviously on the video portion of it, but is there a piece of you that still kind of goes back to the audio side and wishes there was some audio love? Is there an A in your vocabulary, Bryan? I got to ask.
Unfortunately, I'm not as much of an audio guy as I am a video guy. And that comes back to being a camera designer for several years, that I was so entrenched of video quality. It's got to be great video quality, and audio, if I can hear you, everything's great. So unfortunately, I haven't that side.
There's a lowercase a in your AV.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'll take it. At least it's not missing from, you don't start the ABCs with BCD. That's awesome. Right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. All right. So since we're in the USB conversation, next thing, obviously, since we're talking ABCs, let's talk USB-C.
Okay.
Is that a now thing, or is that still out in the future, or have we somehow missed that boat? Where is USB-C in the conversations of USB cameras? Because we're talking about a higher frame, higher speeds and stuff like, does that matter for the people that are listening? Should they be looking for USB-C, USB?
I think the problem is there isn't that much support for it on the PC side unless you're getting newer PCs. I've had a couple USB-C devices in the lab, and it's like, well, I would need to go buy a new PC to even test it. So I think as it comes out, and now newer iPad Pros have USB-C, so it's getting more and more in the conference room. So it's still yet to come.
So you are you and the USB cameras for the most part, and most people in this space. I spent about 13 years on site. As an on-site corporate AV systems engineer, I was limited by the build of our PCs.
Right.
No matter what I brought into a space, there is very little chance that whatever corporation you are working for is giving you the highest, fastest, speediest video. How much of an anchor is that when we start talking about huddle spaces? When you're dealing with 5-year refreshes on corporate PCs, how much does that hold back or create issues for the end users that are operating in these spaces?
Well, it may limit the choices of the peripherals, but if you're going to go for a refresh, and you might have to include the PC as part of as part of that refresh, depending on the peripheral choice.
Is there any? Okay, I'm going to ask this because I'm wondering if you are a frequenter of the Apple stores, Microsoft stores, and Best Buys. Have you ever been impressed? And I think I know the answer to this, but have you ever been impressed with a laptop's built-in webcam? I tried. I tried for the people at home. I tried. There is no. All right.
Yeah.
Not even the real. No, forget it. I'm not even the ones that you pay like thousands of dollars for.
I've yet to see integrated cameras that meet my expectation.
Okay, so
let's just put it that way.
Let's flip that. How are the cameras that are coming in these whiteboards? How have they improved? I mean, they're not the same. They're not as small. They're not as limited or as thin. But how have they improved over, say, over the last 10 years?
Sure. Well, the simple fact that they exist is a good thing. That they are being included, the Jamboard, the D10, the D10, D7, Cisco's whiteboard, that they're included and they're an integral part, so you don't have to dongle off a USB webcam to have video. And so the field of view is pretty good. They have good sensors. They have some of the framing capabilities, and so they're definitely improving quite a bit since the days of yore.
Awesome. So we can feel confident that the built-in cameras in a lot of these newer whiteboards will do what they are designed to do. And I have to say designed and put that as a footnote if I could put a little star somewhere, because I've seen people try to jam a 55-inch board with a built-in camera into a space that had no business.
Right.
Taking an all-in-one device as the main display.
Sure.
On the same token, how much has this I'm not going to say line array, but beamforming microphones, that's the right term I'm looking for. How much have beamforming microphones now added to that experience? Because at one point, these whiteboards are very limited, maybe 2, 3, 4 microphones. With these beamformers now, you got a spread out coverage.
Right.
How much has that also played into the acceptance of whiteboards as a main huddle space option?
Well, if you can't capture the people in a room with audio, then there's a there's a big problem. And I don't know that fancy lingo like beamforming or anything is making making things better, or if the microphones are just better themselves than they were several years ago. So,
you're probably the first person that's ever accused me of using fancy lingo. I am offended.
well, I apologize.
Honestly, I try not to use fancy lingo. Now, for all you people keeping score at home, that would be 1 point for me for fancy lingo. Awesome. So, you have a history with video conferencing beyond just the USB stuff. So I'm going to get to that history, but something that keeps coming back and is constant in when we talk about video conferencing and spaces in general. The portable video system has always been there since the days of the picture tells,
yes.
Where there were the dual monitor systems, 36-inch TVs on big ass carts, for lack of a better term, right, being hauled around and moved around, and ISDN lines being plugged at a DMARC and moved to different places manually, no less. Are we seeing a return to the one system shared between systems, or has, in your opinion, it become kind of like not a thing anymore? Our cart system's back. And if so, we need to make people aware of the fact that they're here.
Right. Well, I think cart systems are more for moving it around the room itself, not for transporting it between rooms. The price point of these things now, there's a low point of entry and still has good quality, so you can populate several rooms and you don't really have to do the push it down the hall to have a video conference.
Yeah, one of the bigger issues I saw was it wasn't even a video conferencing system, but it was a rolling presentation system. I'm not going to get into what brand it was, but it's their monitor with a couple of their hardwire plugs. And the idea was that you'd bring it into a room and 4 people would connect wired to the system, and you move around and everybody's collaborating. Cool idea, until you're the person who booked the room next door to it and needed it.
Right.
So I came from the school of thought that if it's not nailed to the wall, it's not in the room. And
right.
I had a very good mentor and a former boss in Steve Grace, who would argue that we'll go to battle over putting equipment in a room versus something on wheels, because it would never, ever be at the right place at the right time. And the level of additional support that requires was, it was hard to measure and hard to put a person who thought that splitting a presentation system, no less, not just a video conference, because that has its whole other scheduling issues that come with it. But that was a big thing. So cool. It's good to see that the cart systems are here to be repositioned within a room, but not leave space. Cool.
Yeah, I have a whiteboard on a cart right now in my office, and I can just rotate it into place, work on it. When I'm done, I push it up against the wall for when I have to tear down and set something else up, and it works great.
Cool. Do you also analyze the touch points on the screen? I understand your UC, but if a whiteboard is a whiteboard, are you analyzing the touch points and the reactiveness and the ability to write, and is that part of your setup?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a list of several things that we test, and it's not just how good it works in a video conference, or how good the microphone or camera is. Is there latency when you're drawing? Is the pen really close to what you're drawing, or is it a 1/4 inch behind it? How fast can you annotate without it lagging behind? Yeah, we have a lot of ways to test these things, and we test them very thoroughly.
Cool. Yeah, because that, sometimes you're paying for certain things, and it may, they may not splurge on the extra touch points, and it only comes to light when you actually go to put, 10 fingers on it.
Right. Yeah.
Not that happens. All right. So your big shows for the year are obviously Infocom, I would assume ISC, and Enterprise Connect, I would consider as your top 3. What would you put as the big shows for what you guys do at Wainhouse?
Yeah, for us, our big show is Enterprise Connect. That's because that's more as Wainhouse as a whole, because there's contact center, there's UC apps, there's all these products. That's more based around what we do versus some of the things at Infocom, like digital signage, we don't get into, and some live events we don't get into that sort of thing. For me personally, it's Infocom #1 and Enterprise Connect #2. I enjoy, and I've been to many more Infocoms than Enterprise Connects, and that's just more. It seems more looser, more touchy-feely, less handshaking and meeting vendors, and that's what's Enterprise Connect is more for me.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. So the UC kind of conversation is much deeper over at Enterprise Connect, and that was one of the questions I had to ask, because I have a list of stuff here that we need to get to, and we've been spending all this time answering and digging into you and getting you to give us free advice so we don't have to. Hopefully, I'm not getting a bill. I hope not. So now that we have gone through the Infocom and what you do and the USBs and touch points, now let's get to the good stuff. You, sir, are an expert in the video conferencing field. I know this, you know this. We may not want to talk about it or brag about it, but you know something that many people don't. Can you please tell us what the hell happened to the telepresence suite?
Oh. First, it was software-based video conferencing that started killing it.
Mm-hmm.
Then software video conferencing being very good killed it further. And it just became the overall price point, and the fact that you can now have video conferencing anywhere and you're not relegated to a $500,000 room to have video conferences.
Now, the way I remember telepresence and the way it was pitched was that it was the most perfect environment, the ecosystem. The ecosystem was the whole room had to be ripped apart and reconfigured and built around the system. In theory, sounds great until you got the bill.
Right.
God, that was expensive to get that work done. And on top of that, telepresence was pioneering something very unusual about 10, 15 years ago, which was white glove service.
Yes.
Who would have thunk that would have been a thing? And what I mean by telepresence being white glove service was you picked up a phone, hey, my call didn't connect. Boom, your call connected. You walked in, it touched the button. Or maybe there was a sensor in the room that knew you were there. Things turned on magically. People were enamored by it because you walked into this room and the room was thinking. Well, right. Pseudo thinking, but gave you the impression it knew what you were doing. You were a builder of these spaces. Yes. You were heavily vested in this stuff, man.
Yeah.
And you believed in the whole thing, but the software was tough. But I think overall that cost at some point, the upkeep and the maintenance of it kind of got outpaced by the soft codecs.
Right. The probably the biggest issue we had, it wasn't necessarily the price of the product. It was, which was $250,000 to $500,000, but it was, what's the room remediation cost? And we designed a product that had, it was too tall in some instances. We needed a 9-foot ceiling. Well, you're not always going to get that somewhere. And so if a customer really wanted it, well, they got to do something about their ceiling, and that it became double the price of the product to get the product installed.
Wow. I personally, my one gripe, it was a great product. I saw one room that was built at spec, meaning there wasn't a change, there was no change orders, there wasn't, ceilings were adjusted, floor were cut, core drilled. It was done by the book. Perfect. End users come in, everybody loves it, hands free. Next room, we're going to order it. Here's the catch. We want more people. Those rooms were not built for audiences. Next thing you know, the 6-person intimate, very expensive conference room, which gave you the impression that you were sitting across from somebody, turned into stadium seating, movie theaters, and you're now looking over people's faces. Cameras are trying to zoom where between two heads, you're not allowed to move. So now you're like pinned.
Right.
That, I think, led to such a demise of the overall product, and the fact that people let that happen.
Right.
I think that also aided in the whole telepresence falling apart.
Right. It started to hurt the experience to where, if you're in a third row talking to a person in the third row on the other side, they're so small, even though the people in the front row are life size. It just didn't really work with 3 rows of people. So
you learned firsthand that no matter what we as professionals are going to say, the end user has ultimate say.
Sure.
So the lesson I'm teaching to the viewers that are watching this is for all you sitting there that think that the voice control Alexa is never going to go corporate. Go look at the history lessons of what end user requests did to telepresence, how end user requests led to the iPhone entering our corporate world, which it was never designed for.
Right.
There are history lessons to be learned, and in what the end user, how much power an end user has to influencing where our technology is, just in case you thought you were speccing product. All right, Bryan. So we talked about the demise of telepresence. Unfortunately, great idea, great concept, a lot overpriced, but ultimately it went through its cycle and we lived and learned, right? So let's find out more about you, because this is what we want to find out. Tell me about your latest vacation, because I am super jealous. Where did you go? And for those that don't follow Bryan on the internet, you should have, because he was posting. And at one point I told him to stop posting pictures of anything else that didn't have glaciers in it. So please tell me, how'd your vacation go?
It went well. We traveled the ring road around Iceland, and we spent, I believe, 9 days driving around. We drove around the whole country, and it surprised me that when I did a map overlay, Iceland is about the size of Ohio, where I live. And so I think about, okay, how could I drive around Ohio in 9 days and see everything we needed to see? But a lot of hours on the road, but we got to see a lot of great sights and several glaciers, and it was really cool.
So the techie in us is going to ask, what kind of tech did you see out there, or was it super analog?
Oh, we had a tiny little Wi-Fi hotspot that we used in the car, and we had internet access everywhere. So I did a live tweet at one waterfall way out in the middle of nowhere. It was good, and every place we stayed had really fast Wi-Fi connections. So I was able to stay connected. And I know some people don't; they disconnect when they go on vacation. I can't do that personally. So I was well connected, so it was good.
That's awesome. And like I said, if you haven't seen Bryan's stuff, he has posted some pictures up on Twitter, all very nice stuff. I personally only went through Iceland as a layover, and I have promised myself and a gentleman that was traveling with me, Bill O'Donnell, that we would definitely have to go back and check it out, because we were just in there for a short period of time. But I don't know, man. It's something about volcanic beaches covered in snow, kind of just, there's an appeal there. I need to know more. The curiosity is driving me crazy. So, all right. So you went to Iceland, you did the Reykjavik stuff. Now I want to find out a little bit about home. Whereabout are you in Ohio?
Just north of Cincinnati. There's a little area called Westchester, which is just north of the loop around downtown Cincinnati, and that's where I live.
Awesome. So does Cleveland rock?
Not to me.
Drew Carey, you're wrong. You're so wrong. Cleveland does not rock. Oh God, I'm going to have to ask this, and this is going to be painful. Are you a Cleveland sports fan? Suffering Cleveland sports fan?
No, since I live near Cincinnati, I'm supposed to be a suffering Cincinnati fan, but I'm not into football and baseball, and that's all we have in Cincinnati. More of a hockey fan.
All right. So, God. All right. Because that's a whole, I mean, yeah, Ohio, outside of college
Right.
sports, I don't know if Ohio really likes their professional teams. Uh, they just may have turned on them, and I just probably made a lot of enemies. Sorry, any Cleveland Brown fans, but I am a Giant fan, and Odell was ours before you took on that headache. So anyway, let's go into the next question. Are you a frequenter of concerts?
No.
You don't go to concerts.
No. Used to when I was a kid. It's more of a hearing related thing that, yeah, I used to be one of the front row guys back in the day, and now not so much in the crowds, not so much in the super loud music. I would love to go to concerts in an intimate setting where the volume was a little less than 140 decibels.
I'd put money that you're not alone in that in that club, especially in the AV space, especially with guys that have spent years on the road that at this point been there, done that, loved it. Now their kind of acoustic performance at the local bar is perfectly fine by them.
Yeah, I love that. I love live music, but a rock concert in the front row no longer appeals to me.
I've frequented a lot of concerts, and I do occasionally go to concerts and stuff like that. Not as much as some of my buddies who seem like it's a weekly thing. But I will, for one, Saturday, I'll be in Asbury Park I won't go to the venue because they're playing outdoors. So I'm going to listen to Stone Temple Pilots comfortably from the comfort of my own chair, as opposed to standing, fighting people for a $9 beer. Right. So I will be listening to Stone Temple Pilots, eating Korean tacos on Saturdays for those that are wondering what I will be doing. And I'm not saying what date that is. So tough luck. Anyway, name your favorite movie?
Oh, dumb as it is, Tropic Thunder.
What?
Yes. I like dumb comedy. Raising Arizona is another one of my favorites. I'm not a drama person, not a real sci-fi person. I kind of just like to laugh at dumb movies.
Were you like a National Lampoon's kind of guy?
Yeah.
All right. So if you're a National Lampoon's kind of guy, is there a Cousin Eddie in your family?
Yo, no. Oh.
There is. You don't have.
No, thankfully no.
The guy with an RV who goes RV. You may be Cousin Eddie.
I have an RV, but I dump in the appropriate location.
And okay, just for the record, you are not Cousin Eddie.
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. Between Cousin Eddie, those National Lampoon's video, anytime I travel, I refer to any of the vacations. I have yet to go into a casino like the one in Vegas that they went to, where they were playing war for money. But I'm a big fan of the European vacation, and obviously Christmas vacation is a fan. I'm a fan of that. So funny. Why Tropic Thunder? Of all the movies, it's got the right comedians for you.
Yeah, there are just so many sound bites. I can go to YouTube and I've heard the sound bites 100 times and I still laugh my head off. It's just funny.
So that begs the next question: what is the most quotable movie for you that you find yourself quoting all the time?
Oh, fair question. Yeah, I don't know that I quote Tropic Thunder. I do some quotes from Raising Arizona. It's a good quotable movie.
I'm impartial to Airplane. I constantly find myself quoting that. That's probably one of the most quotable movies of all time. And don't call me Shirley. Anyway, so we know that you are not digging the concert thing. You kind of dig the comedy route because it's a form of escapism. What side of AV, since you are on the the USB UC space, more the conference side. What side of AV do you still gives you that like giddy feeling when you walk into a space? Is it when you go to an InfoComm, for example, and you're not in your, I guess, area in the UC space, do you find yourself drifting off into sound rooms or to the live event space? Does some of that stuff wow you?
It's a thing that I don't understand, those products, and I have great respect for the people that are in those industries. I just have never delved into those. I'm a camera guy. I love seeing cameras. I love when companies come out with new cameras, and I get to look at them, test them, check their field of view. I'm just I am a video conferencing nerd. So
you said it, not me. Just want to absolve myself of that. Are you a fan of like photography cameras? Are you into that sort of stuff?
No.
Come on, man. Those are kind of like, aren't they interlinked?
No. Not to me. I do my photography on an iPhone. So yeah, I'm not in photography, but I am, and I'm not in like video recording things, but I'm into video conferencing cameras. Everybody's got their thing. That's mine.
Wow. Video conferencing cameras.
Yep.
You go to Iceland and you take pictures on an iPhone.
Yep.
You have an RV, but you're not Kezinetti. This is definitely, I stepped into this one thinking I'm definitely going to get some bizarre question. Man, Bryan, you are about as normal as they come.
Yeah,
it's the simple things, man. This is awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out and giving us a lesson on USB, because unfortunately, it's something that I feel is kind of overlooked in the space. It's not and shouldn't be treated as just an add-on. And as you pointed out, there are a lot of things to consider, but there are a lot of good cameras out there now, and at least from what I gather, you feel pretty good about the selection that people have as opposed to what they did even 5 years ago to put in a good camera and a good VC in a good not USB, in the UC space.
Right. There are a lot of good cameras out there, and there are more coming out all the time, and they're only going to get better, and that makes me happy.
Okay, without giving it away, and I got to know this, and I don't want you to tell me any information, you could just nod your head so that the people listening on audio have to turn on their camera or turn on their monitor to listen. But do you get sneak peeks at the stuff that's coming out ahead of time?
Yes and no. Sometimes I'll know about something not far along before it gets released GA. A lot of times I don't want to know. I have a big mouth and I want to tell everybody that, oh my God, I just saw this great camera or this great device, and so I'm not privy to stuff that's that's in alpha or beta format anywhere, but I do know about some things. I'll leave before they come out.
Leave it at that. You admitted to having a big mouth. Next thing I'm going to know is you're going to drop the secret to the iPhone 12 camera that I shouldn't be knowing about, if that's your thing. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I know where to find you, but where can everybody here find out more about Wainhouse Research?
It's wainhouse.com is the easiest way to find us. And to find me, it's the best place is on Twitter at Bryan Hellard, BryanHellard.
Does Wainhouse still put out I remember the research newsletter. That was something I had in my inbox almost on like a monthly or weekly basis many years ago. Do they still put out that? I mean, I've changed my email address.
Right. I don't know if they're still doing that.
That was like the de facto. If I needed to find out any information regarding any of the UC companies back in the day when there was only like 4 of them, that's where you would find out. I guess the UC newsletter would be kind of like a telephone book these days as far as who considers themselves unified communication. And maybe that's a show on itself, is what is unified communication and collaboration. Thank you, sir, for coming on the show. I appreciate you giving us some insight into the world of USB and what's out there, especially on the USB camera side and on the camera stuff, because like I said, I don't think a lot of people pay attention to those details until it's too late, and then now all of a sudden you got to backpedal and make that fix. So thank you, Bryan, for coming on the show.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
My name's Chris Neto. I am the host of Rebels Flux. This show is sponsored by Starin. Starin, you'll see all the information pop up below here. It's Starin.biz. You can find out about Starin at Starin.biz. You can find them on the Twitterverse under Starin_MKG. You can find me on Twitter at Chris_Neto. I'm on Instagram as AV Shout, and you can find me over at LinkedIn. If you type in Christopher Neto CTS, you'll get me. I love putting that little CTS. It separates me from an Australian singer-songwriter by the same name. I have CTS. He hasn't earned his. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you earned your CTS, congratulations. Thank you, Chuck Espinosa, for making that possible. If you taught them, or Melissa Dillman, if you taught them on their CTS exam. My name's Chris Neto. This has been another episode of Rebels Flux.